Conflict, as we all know, in every part of the world, is just the other side of people who are disputing the same resources. You will never see a conflict somewhere where you don't have behind a misunderstanding or disagreement over a resource. And that's where the linkage between climate change and conflict comes from. Because when we say that climate change is affecting, for example, the rainy season, is creating, droughts, we don't have access to water anymore. So those resources will start becoming less and less in those communities. So more people will be looking for the same resources, and then we are in a situation where there could be a problem over those resources. So conflict, I know that you are very aware of what is happening now in the Sahel region. Is becoming a highly political concern in the Sahel region. But it's not only now in the Sahel region, it's already coming into the northern parts of the Gulf of Guinea, countries like Côte d'Ivoire, Togo, Benin, who are having the first attack or conflict between farmers and pastoralists. It is not that we are saying that those conflicts are only created by climate change, but climate change is aggravating those conflicts. It affects the distribution, the abundance, and the availability of the natural resources. So more people are looking for the same area to provide water to the cattle or to provide, to get food for them. So it is actually exacerbating the tensions between the farmers and the pastoralist communities. And it goes back to what Mohammed was mentioning about migration, because when people are not able to find the resources in their own areas, the first adaptation reflex that they have is to leave that area to go in another area to get the same resources. And when they go, along their way, there are conflicts because they could destroy some crops, or even when they go to a place, it could create some conflict with the local communities. So transhumance as a mode of livestock rearing has become, over the years, a source of recurrent and violent conflict. There is a recent report by a think tank in the Netherlands, which reports that in the Sahel and Gulf of Guinea, we have at least 5 to 7 conflicts every month, which are between farmers and pastoralists. So this issue is becoming more and more present in our communities. It's not that it's only created by climate change, but the climate change effects are exacerbating the conflict. Yeah. This, as I had mentioned, it's not that new in terms of problem or challenge, but it's nexus with climate change is something that we just begin to understand. And I would specifically, as we had discussed, we want this webinar to be focused on the solutions. So I want to share a specific one, which is being put into experience by the government of Benin. We don't know yet if it is the solution, but it's the beginning of the solution to solve that issue of conflict between farmers and pastoralists. In 2021, so last year, the president has appointed the High Commissioner for the Sedentarization of Pastoralists. It's a bit conflicting even in the concept to talk about the sedentarization of pastoralists, because pastoralists by nature, they are nomadic people. Transhumance is a mode of living. So there has been a lot of very intense discussions around if it would be possible to get those pastoralists to stay in the same location. And when my think tank was looking at the issue for the government, just to mention, we have a help desk where we support government with evidence and research findings when they want to make important decisions. So we work on the topic, and what we noticed from the field is that those people that we call pastoralists, so nomadic communities, in fact, they were in some areas of Benin for the last 70 years. So we keep calling them nomadic people or people who have transhumance as a mode of living. But for the last 50 or 70 years, we have many communities of them who have been staying in the same area. So that was one of the key arguments for pushing for those communities to stay in a very fixed area, and then reduce the migration from one area to another one. And the government has, in addition to that political position, they also have launched, with the support of the West African Development Bank, a very large program, which is called the Program for Standardization of Pastoralists. And what are they basically doing currently? The program has three components. The first one is to do a kind of mapping of the natural resources and the areas that have the potential to host those pastoralists. So they are creating what we call in French, campement peul. So it's a delimited area for pastoralists. It's very big, very large area, but the understanding is that they will stay in that, in the borders of that specific area. And for them to have access to the resources, the government is now concentrating very large investments to make sure that they have they can produce food for the cattle. They can have access to water. So there have been a number of infrastructure that the government is building now to try to recreate the natural environment or the natural resources that they were looking for when they migrate from an area to another one. The second component of the program is the investment in basic social services. One important point is that when we talk about climate change impacts on the farmers, on the herders, on fishermen, one important point is also that you can't adapt well to climate change while you still have some basic socioeconomic challenges. Access to basic social services such as education, health, access to water, access to transportation services. So the government is also concentrating a number of social investment in those areas so that the communities can find the place as a good one to stay. And the third component is on the investment in soft capacities. The second component, as I had mentioned, is we can call it a hard investment. But hard investment is not something that is very beneficial if you don't support it with some soft investment. And in terms of soft investment, they are looking at two specific aspects. The first one is capacity building. So helping, for example, the farmers to have access to innovations, to have good cropping techniques, support the pastoralists to, for example, to handle diseases of the cattle. So a whole program of capacity building, mainly through agricultural advisory systems. The second important soft investment is on social cohesion. Those conflicts that we also mentioned emerge because there is a disruption in the social cohesion of those communities. So there have been some activities for reinforcing social cohesion from 3 dimensions. The first one is social cohesion within one community. The second one is the social cohesion between one community and another one. So inter-community social cohesion. The first one is the intra-community social cohesion. And the third one is the relationship between the state and the communities, which is also one of the key driver of all those conflicts. We have some areas in Benin which, territorially speaking, they are part of Benin, but when you visit the country, they are actually living in Nigeria. They use Nigeria currency, they go to Nigeria school. If they have problem, they are referring to Nigeria police. So there is a disconnect between the government and the local communities. And all those issues are fueling conflict in the, on the ground. So combining those different components, we are now reaching a point where we could argue for a holistic solution. We should not be only looking at what are the innovations for climate change adaptation. We should also be aware that those innovations involve in a political economy. They involve in an environment which encompasses many other elements. So that's what the government is currently trying to do. The theory of change behind that is that reducing the migration or reducing the movement of the pastoralists will reduce the number of conflicts. And before I conclude on that, I want to mention that this policy that the government of Benin is trying to push will also be successful if it can have an echo at the regional level. Because the conflicts between farmers and pastoralists is, of course, something that could be treated internally within the country, but it is a regional issue. If you cannot limit pastoralists living, Nigeria to Niger or coming from Nigeria to Benin, and you are just handling the Benin case, it will not be very much effective in the long term. So the solution should also be a regionally and spatially coordinated solution so that the spillover effects are reduced from one region to another one.